going to give you an overview on the basics of App Builder. So to recap, our relative resources or steps contain our profile of objects, arrays, and properties. So if they are relatable in a web application, how do we actually link them? Inside the App Builder, we can link these resources by using the drag to connect to UI feature, which we will use next. For scenario, let's say that we want to eventually retrieve information of the weather for the next 5 days. We'll eventually be using an API weather or free weather API source. So let's create a new feature called week weather and 6 new steps, which will consist of 1 step for initiating the feature requests and 5 steps for the next 5 days of the results of the weather. Okay, so for our first step, let's name it lookup weather. And our market location property that we created earlier will be used in this step too. We will need to add a myLocation string property to the step and make it user defined. User defined also means user displayed too. Let's also add a create and edit link, and this will allow the user to see the step and also allow them to edit their entries. For a production application, this will mean giving the user a chance to edit their entry, or with more complex business logic, allowing the user to only have a certain amount of tries on a step, for example. A great example for that actually will be a password submission. You may want to give a user an option to only enter their password a maximum of 3 times. So now that we've added our first step in our week weather feature, let's add the rest. But this time it's in your hands. So we've now had one opportunity to add a create and edit link. But for the next 5 steps, these are the names. So the first one will be day 1, second, day 2, third, day 3, fourth, day 4, fifth, day 5. For each of these 5 steps, I want you to add a create link. Pause now. Once you're done and once you're happy, click play to continue. Hope you enjoyed that exercise. And now that we've added our steps, let's fill them up. Begin by switching to Data Editor to create our properties that will be populated by our third-party weather API choice. Click on the Add Object button and name this new object Weather Info. For now, Weather Info will be our parent object. With the object still selected, or select the object and create 2 more objects. The first one will be Summary, all in lowercase, and you can add a description detailing that this will be a more descriptive result of the weather for that day. And the second object will be Values, and the description you can give will be numerical weather information for that object. The thing that you will notice by now is that these 2 objects have been automatically nested. You can also drag and drop an object or a property into another object. Okay, let's highlight Summary, the object, as we do need to add a few more properties to it. Add these properties. So the first one will be current weather, camel case, and this will be a string. The second one will be description, with lowercase, and it will be a string. Third one will be temperature, and this will be an integer, and this will be a integer. And the fourth one will be humidity, and this will be a number. And the fifth one, which should be added already, as in earlier on in our course, will be the current location property, and that will, of course, would be a string. Once you've added the properties to the ADM, they will now need to be added to the profile of each of our day steps. To do that, edit each step and repeat dragging and dropping the weather info object into each step. Once you're done, and now that we're done populating the steps for now, we are going to connect the newly created steps in the App Builder UI. Okay, so we're going to begin this part of the section, 4.2, by creating the first flow of the week weather step. Now, to connect your first step, actually, before we start, here's a quick tip. So on the main section or the main page of your business feature, where the steps are displayed in purple, you can zoom in and out because it may become more populated and you may need more space. Best option for that is to zoom in and out so you can match your space to how you want your flow to be run. So to begin, select the right handle of the lookup weather step, as in the first step that should be on the left hand side of the canvas. And once you drag it, a line should appear. You should just drag that line to the left hand side of the day one step. Repeat this by dragging the right hand side of the day one step to the day two step on the left. And then repeat this till you've reached day 4, and on the day 4 step, drag the right hand handle to the day 5 step. Okay, so now that you've experienced the drag to connect UI feature inside Beekeeper, now we need to preview. And to do that, what do? We click on the preview tab, and now we have the global view or the hub and spoke view of our application. Now, it should only show the lookup weather step, and if it doesn't, don't worry, but we'll get back to that later on. But once you click on this step, it should now allow you to enter information. As normal or as standard in Beekeeper Preview, to continue through a flow, we must submit and then Beekeeper will post this data to App Engine. By standard, Beekeeper will always follow each create link until they no longer exist, and then after that, the journey will be classed as done. Since create links allow us to post new data, it is mandatory for one to exist, otherwise the user will not be able to see the next step. Once you click on submit, you should see both the lookup weather step, which is now purple in its editable stage, and the day one step, which is green, which is basically saying that it is ready to be created. Exit our preview and review our flow inside the week weather feature. Enter any string inside the lookup weather field, and after that, click submit. We arrive back where we started. We could try again, but the edit link will always remain available. So why can't we continue on from the day one step or the lookup weather step? I mean, it does make sense for us to submit first and then go to the next consecutive step, right? After all, we have entered our location, so we should be able to continue on. Well, this is where we explain, or this is where I explain how the edit links currently work in Beekeeper. As of version 4.0 of Beekeeper, edit links by default will always be available to the end user client. A step with a create and edit link may cause an indefinite looping on itself due to the API giving us exposure for us to post, which is basically what the create link is doing, and also to put data at the same time, which is basically what the edit link is doing. This is great, but at the end of the day, the user may want their application to be more linear or to be even completely different towards what the API is offering us. In order for us to alter the App Engine API's standard behavior, we need to tell it that we are happy for it to move on to the next step. We could do this by using preconditions and business rules. In section 5, we would be exploring the statements or how these statements can be programmatically used to alter your end-to-end beekeeper journeys. Before we move on to a more intermediate section of App Builder, I'll now explain a passive beekeeper feature of locks. Locking will automatically occur when another logged in user attempts to edit a resource or step while it's currently being edited. This helps to prevent users from overwriting each other's activity in real time. So for example, I'm already signed in with one or on one computer with the username of test and a password of test. And now I'm going to log in with the same username and password of test. And I'll try to edit the first step that we created called current location. And now we can see that a lock icon appears on the step as I try to edit it. As I switch back to the user that's currently editing the step, in this case, look up weather, it will display a message and it will also prevent me from editing the current step, confirming that this step has now been locked. Now you should have a basic understanding of how App Builder works, so now we're going to move on to section 5, where we will be diving deeper into App Builder's functionalities.